My name is Smita Kuriakose, and I am the lead economist in the World Bank, looking at private sector development issues. So, innovation, SME development, um, finance for innovation, and industrialization are some of the areas that I work on. And I work closely with folks at DSI as well as DTIC. So, very nice to meet you all. So, to your question, I think it goes back to the previous panel in terms of there are various stages that we look at in terms of, when it looks like in terms of funding. Uh, you're looking at the pipeline as well as the commercial viability. So if we were only to be looking at the commercial viability, you're only going to be looking at a funnel approach wherein you will only have large, very bankable projects get funding. And the same, so just to give a quote for South Africa, the large banks basically fund 5% because those 5% are where the bankable projects are. So I think the work that is being done in the Innovation Hub and with the Innovation Bridge portal is at the seed level. So there is a role for present at the seed level, wherein for have you used the A-Star program where they provide matching grants but also provide tax incentives so that you're able, just the most risky process, right? The early stage where the big banks are not going to come in. It's too early for the VCs to come in. So there is a role there for government to play a part. Then you have what we see kind of the growth stage at a higher level before the VCs come in. And so countries such as Korea used vehicles like the Korea Investment Fund to be able to, they don't take a stake, but there is a mechanism by which you crowd in private investment. Now, the SASME fund is a similar vehicle. It's fund of funds. However, there isn't an institutional framework around it. So one could say that it's a drop in the ocean. It's done some really good stuff. How do you actually scale up this example, and how do you institutionalize it? Because it was, in effect, a private initiative with the DSI now coming in, and also given that there is this gap, this new initiative at the seed level that the SASME fund, the latest initiative is exactly to look at the pipeline issue. Then there is the example of the Israel Yozma Fund, which has been extremely successful, and what started off as something wherein the Israel government wanted to actually have innovation for defense. It has now become their largest innovation program, and it is fully financially sustainable because they had a royalty based program. So companies that actually benefited from the YOSMA program actually paid royalties back in the fund. So there was really this ownership and this sustainability, which is actually a problem in most government programs. How do you sustain these? How do you ensure that those firms who actually do really well give back to the sustainability of this program? So I think that's something that it's not easy to replicate, but if one was to look at that as an example, that could be something. It would have it's demand driven because if a company has to pay royalties, they really are going to utilize it for something that is meaningful, not take it as free money. Then there is a return to the investment for the government. Of course, there will be some programs, some projects that don't make it, but those who do make it will be able to, sustain a greater pipeline of projects. So, in a fiscally constrained environment, for example, which South Africa faces today, like many other countries, this is something that could be very useful to look at. Now, so DFIs have a role, of course, but I think DFIs always have a developmental role to play. So there's DFIs, which play a very different role from VCs, and then blended finance. So I think blended finance is a tool where DFIs have a role to play in the development so that it's not all about returns, whereas VCs have to look at high impact, high return. But I think the role here is to look at not just the funding, but also look at how do you increase the pipeline of investable projects.